The Chicago area. I mean, even those of us that were born in the Chicago suburbs always say the Chicago area, or the Chicagoland area, as they talk about it in Chicago. So I was born in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, northwest suburb of Chicago. Grew up there. I spent my whole childhood there until when I went to college. My dad, the son of Greek immigrants that immigrated directly to Chicago, and after stints in Argentina and Mexico before arriving to Chicago, but ultimately settled in Chicago. There's a pretty big Greek community in Chicago, in the Chicago area. And never spoke Greek. You know, my dad was, like a lot of first-generation immigrants, didn't want anything to do with being Greek, wanted to be American, and so never really taught Greek at home. When I was 16 years old, I just for some reason that I don't recall, became an exchange student in Spain and spent a summer in Spain. And just, even though my Spanish skills were not that great, just fell in love with Spanish culture, Spanish language, everything about Spain. I was, not from a family that traveled in Europe. That's not something we did. We went to Milwaukee for vacation, St. Louis, those were the big trips. So it was a huge, huge culture shock in all sorts of different ways. First, I thought I was Mr. Spanish and everything was I could speak Spanish. I'd had a year after all, and I got in the car when they picked me up and the family picked me up, and I had no idea what these people were saying at all. And that was huge, a huge, huge culture shock. It also makes me identify with new immigrants to the United States now. My father tells a story of my grandfather getting to Detroit, which was his first port of entry in the United States, and literally sitting in an apartment for like 4 days afraid to go out because he didn't speak any English. So I understood what that feels like to be a stranger. I mean, I think people are always, or almost always, the most comfortable where they feel their roots are, and where they're in a place where they feel like they understand the culture. I go back to Chicago very often, and when I do, when I step off the plane, I always feel like this sigh of relief that I'm with people I understand and people I know. There's a certain Midwestern friendliness that does not exist, I think, in the East Coast so much. That's different than so-called Southern hospitality. Certain genuineness, I think, that I find there. And again, this is my bias from growing up there and being comfortable in that culture. But on the personal side also, I think, some of the work that I've done and some of the research that I've done has been on immigration. And I think from a personal perspective, I also think about new immigrants to the United States right now, mostly Latino immigrants, and the parallels between what they're facing in their lives and what my grandfather faced, because it's all very similar. In terms of bigger questions like, does the American dream still exist? My grandfather came here with essentially nothing, and within a number of years was a restaurant owner, and big surprise being Greek, right? But I just wonder if that's possible anymore. And so part of my interest in immigration and studying immigration is, what sort of opportunities, is this a land of opportunity anymore? What do Latinos face when they arrive to the United States? How hostile is it? Because my grandfather certainly faced hostility. So that's sort of the intersection of, the personal past with what I do. I think the biggest thing I learned about travel was that the world is a really huge place. I think when you're in high school, you don't realize that. When you're in high school, the world is my high school. I really want to get a car. That's a big, huge thing for me. And I think the thing that I saw when I got to Spain, the minute I got to Spain, was, wow, this is a really gigantic world with people who do things in a really different way, political systems that are completely different, people like living their own reality. That's a real reality to them. I mean, I know that sounds like redundant, but no, I mean, these are real realities that are existing all over the world that are just as important as our own, that are just as genuine as our own, that present just as many challenges to people as our own. And I would like my kids to realize that, and I think they have. I think they have to a certain extent. I think they appreciate the travel more than they've let on. And I hope they continue to do it. I think they will. I think they will. I think once you start doing stuff like that, it kind of gets into your genes.